Playing or managing?
Genuinely, I preferred managing.
Really?
I did. I did. I did. And I think player manager was, people say it's difficult. I actually found my managerial career harder whenever I wasn't playing. This one did.
Whenever you weren't
Whenever
actually
I
in.
stopped at the end, and I found it harder.
I find that so difficult to understand because surely it's easier for you to pick a starting 11 when you don't have to put yourself in.
To be fair, Johnny, I didn't really put myself in a lot, but I also always knew. I think the thing was, because I was still okay as a player, I wasn't totally done.
Yeah.
Okay, I mightn't be able to run or whatever, but I still could play a little bit. And I think the big benefit that I had, and I found as a player manager, I said this to Mager, said this to Wendy whenever he was there as well, when you're standing the sideline and you see what you're seeing on the pitch in terms of what you want to change,
Yeah.
when you're putting yourself on, you can change it.
Yeah.
I could put on another player and he mightn't be able to carry out that.
Yeah. Or you've instructed him and he goes and
does nothing else.
and say,
You know,
yeah.
and that's the thing that I always say, you know, I found it, and there was lots of games, you know, like I always remember, I love this boy to bits, like Doyler, Andrew Doyle, honestly one of the best signings I ever made. He was so infectious, his attitude, his desire to win, the way everybody just bounced off him in training because he played every minute, every training session, every game as if it was his last.
Horrible to play against.
And it was horrible, but that's where it all stemmed from. And we played Ballyclare one year in a pre-season, and he played against Skinner, and I never seen anybody put it up to Skinner as well in my life.
Yeah.
He put it really up to them. We then played Carrick the following season, the following season, and he'd signed for Carrick, and they were in the Premier League. We went down to Taylor's Avenue, and honestly, I can't remember who played up front with Skinner that day, but he kicked the lumps out of Skinner, and I was standing on the sideline and I was going,
yeah,
are you going to let that happen? You know, the size of you, but Skinner was just Skinner, you know, unless there was a big crowd at Windsor Park, or, you know, going to Taylor's Avenue, going to Dungannon away, Skinner, that's not, he's used to playing with Derry, you know, so that was the way he was. Skinner, you know, he needed atmosphere, he needed crowd to bounce off, and
to be fair, he delivered usually.
He did on the big games, on the big occasions, always did. But sometimes my only thing with Skinner was when we played the smaller teams away from home. You know, it could be, he could have went out and give you nothing, or he could have done okay, but you couldn't rely on it. But I knew if I went to Linfield away, if I went to the Oval, I knew 100% Skinner would be on it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I know Ballymena had loads of problems with him. So the Coleraine, the big game, the big derby, he always produced, and that was him. But he went down to Tears Up, and I swear he kicked them, and I turned around to Wendy. And this is the things that, and I used to do this loads of times, but again, I had that winning mentality, and it never left me. And I stand sideline, and I was going, now Doyler was on a yellow card at the time, and we were getting beat 2-1. So I made a sub, but can't remember who took off. And I said to Wendy before I went on, I'd have Doyler sent off in 5 minutes. And he went, hi. I says, 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. And I run on the pitch. The ball was out for a throw in the far side of the stand side, and Doyler was the nearest one to the dugout. And I run past him, and I just flicked him on the side of the calf. Doyler
Ready to go
straight away, as he was on the pitch. But I just watched this the whole game the way he was. I flicked him. Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? So the ball went out to Kyle Neal. I went on the Doyler, pushed off him, and come for the ball. I knew he was coming straight through me. So as soon as he went, the ball was coming towards me. I literally jumped, and he just went to bang, bang, and I went down. And the next thing, I just looked around. The referee come over, yellow card, red card. I'll Doyler. Oh, you know the way he was. So he goes and stands on the sideline, and then go, Doyler's from Rathcoole here, like, see, like, does that have a different kettle of fish here? Sienna went off. It was never funny in my life. He went, oh, you're one. I got there.
Yeah.
But he realised himself. And that's what I'm saying. That's only a small example, but if I had told another player to go on that, I couldn't rely that he was going to do that.
Yes.
You know, I couldn't rely on that. And it's again, there's so many examples, but it was funny because, as I said, Doyler was, and again, I had this impression of Doyler, and again, I have to praise him now, because I remember phoning him whenever I was on holidays and I was looking through a list and seeing Doyler was available, or he was on an amateur. I phoned Doyler up straight away and he went, "You're taking the mickey here, aren't you?" I just got him sent off the year. He said, "You're taking the mickey." I said, "No." And I ended up going mean, and I was thinking, because of what he was like, you've played against on the pitch, horrible person on the pitch. And I'm thinking he's going to be the same off the pitch. Not a nicer fella you couldn't meet, well mannered. He was like so grateful for the opportunity at Glenavon, and again, he was underrated in ways, but he knew his limits, and what he made of that was unbelievable.
I just stuck to his strengths. He knew what his weaknesses were.
And you, the amount of times he played injured for me and done things and maybe had a bad game and people were hammering him, but he wanted to do it for the team. He wanted to do it for him, to help you out. And he was just an incredible human being as a person, and still this day, like I think he's still playing up at Rathcoole, and he literally has one leg. He's waiting on that to rip so he can get an operation. They've told him just to keep until it goes completely. So, with people like that there, and that was probably the biggest thing with the management side of things. Again, from me and my personality in terms of, I want to help people. I want to see other people do well.
Yeah.
And that's whenever I went in at Glenavon, I had 3 sort of sections that I went for. It was the boys that were older, that were maybe being let go by Linfield. You're done. Glentoran, you're done, or whoever, whatever.
They're good footballers.
Derry City, and my thing to them was, right, Davy Jeffrey says you're done. Derry City says you're done. Come and show them that you're not.
Yeah.
Come and show them you can still play.
Point to proof.
And that was the way I try to get the best out of them. Plus they were winners, Then the young kids, I'm going to throw you in. I don't care what the ages are. And then I had these guys around them that were winners, and I just let them play. And I tried my best, and then I brought the lads in from the lower leagues. And I used to say to them, "Come into me, see what happens. You do well, Joel Coopers, you Fitzies, you Peter Campbell's, loads of them over the years." And I used to say, and I always say the same to all the players, whoever come this, listen, I know if we bring you in, you do what I think you can do here and get to the level, I won't be able to keep you.
Yeah.
But same with young players, if I get you a level, I won't be able to pay you the wages at Linfield or Glentoran, but if I can get 3 years out of you or 2 years out of you, whatever, I'm getting 2 good years out of you. You're getting game time to prove that you're a good player. And then if I can't hold on to you because I can't afford the wages, then so be it.
Yeah.
That's not my fault. That's not your fault. But I've gained out of it. The club's gained out of it. They sell you on to another club and you go and better yourself. And I can look back and go, I helped him. I give him a platform to play in and improve, and put my faith in him and give him encouragement. I'm never going to make him better as a footballer. And what he has. But it's helping him around that. And I look back now and see like the Christopher Arthur and I see all these young lads. Yeah, that gives me more pride than winning trophies or getting to Europe, or seeing these lads, Sykesy, for example, or Sykesy playing down in Bristol City. He's they're close to the playoffs, could be playing in the Premier League. And I give him his debut at 15 years of age.
Yep.
And it's looking back at all them lads and you're hoping, and well, I know they appreciate it because they still speak to you. And that's how you know that they appreciated what you've done for them, and like meet Josh Daniels as well. He had a really tough time as well, and was what happened to his family.
Yeah.
I took him in, told him, listen, you'll play every week, and listen, you're too good for us. You just need to get playing every week and get the smile back in your face. He ends up going across the water to England, and he's TNS and wherever now, like, and you get more out of that sometimes in life than you get out of anything.
Do you find that managers are very afraid to do that now? Because we've ultimately seen that over the last sort of 10 years of your managerial career, you've progressed 5, maybe 6 players going across to England or Scotland or wherever they are, and you've played kids. Chrissy Arthur's probably the main one. He was 13, I think, when you gave him his debut, and let's be honest, that's very rare, if probably potentially happening again. It's minimalistic, like.
Yeah, possibly. Well, it can't happen again because the league brought out a rule. It's preventative from happening. But like, as I keep saying, it wasn't like a blind man can see Christopher Atherton's an extreme talent, because like, it's not as if it was just Paddy's played him nearly every week since he's come in, or if he hasn't started him, he's brought him along.
Yeah.
He's a talent, and I think it's just, I think a lot of people have the fear of putting kids in. I think they have a fear of putting kids in and playing them. And for me, I don't have that fear. I never had that fear. And well, everybody knew it by the team selections. Like we went through like squad that left us, and like every one of them went on England or Scotland or won Irish League titles. You know it, and we're going to imagine we'd have kept that together.
Yeah.
And being able to pay their wages, you know, it would have been incredible. Like Robbie McDade, Shane Lavery up front, Joel Cooper, George Daniels, Bobby Burns, Sykesy, you know, Reece Marshall, Singy, Keelan Marin, Daniel Armour played a bit for us. You know, you're going to yourself, there's probably more of them, Christopher Arthur.
Tuffers is away. He won titles after that, Tuffers.
Aye, but he wasn't a young kid when he called. I mean, these are guys that actually started with us between 15 and 18.
Yeah.
All those guys. You know, and they've all went on and done what they've done, but we were the ones that give them that first opportunity of first team football, that taste of it, and put faith in them and give them belief that they could do it.
At the end of your managerial career, it became quite toxic, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, there was a lot, but listen, and I always say this to everybody, whenever you go into management, there's one thing you know, you're going to get sacked. You're going to get sacked. And even if I had done well at Glenavon and say I went to one of the other clubs that offer me a job, I would get sacked there at some stage. Yeah. You're always, like, you might stay in a job, say for example, I got a job at Dundalk, right?
Yeah.
I've done well at Glenavon, get a job at Dundalk, I'm going to get sacked. The chain's going to break at some stage. That's inevitable. No matter who, it happened with Mourinho, it happens everywhere else. Yeah. It'll happen with them all. I think Guardiola is maybe the only one it has never happened to, probably, but it will happen with everybody. And that's the one thing you have to understand before you go in. So every game, every month, every season is a bonus. And that's the way I always look at life. I looked at the positive side of it, and you know, when you look at it, lasted close to 12 years. I think it was 2 months off 12 years and my first gig at it, and I'm going, I've done okay. I've done okay. You know, it's not easy to do that. And you look at the amount of people and that's why
you're not the type of person who looks for credit, but I don't think that anybody has ever gave you the proper credit that I think that you personally deserve, considering the Irish Cups you won, getting Glenavon to Europe, how many times? 5. Yeah. The players that you progressed.
Listen, we listen, and again, I always said, whenever I do anything in life, if I'm working with other or need other people, I always get people that are better at me in areas I'm not strong. And that's what I did. And lots of people told me, oh, don't do that, or don't do this, or don't do that. And I go, but if I'm weak at something, I need somebody that's strong at something. And I don't feel threatened by that. Yeah. And I'll never feel threatened by that, because at the end of the day, my job is to get the best out of the team, to get the best for the club, to be as successful as can. So if I'm terrible at coaching, and I can't take coaching.
Yeah, get it.
I need to get somebody good at coaching, very good at coaching. And if I'm...
Why did you bring Maggers in?
Maggers good crack. No, as I say, Maggers is very good with players, you know. And again, I would say I'm good with people. I'm good at reading people and good at knowing what's going on with people. But as I keep saying, I'm not a talkative person. I'm going to keep in touch with you every day or every week, or, you know, that's not me. Maggers is very good at that.
Yeah, he is.
He's very good at that.
Listening to himself.
You know, he's excellent. And again, he's a really...
He's a good guy.
He's a top guy, but he's shrewd. He's got a great knowledge of the game, and I keep saying he was an unbelievable footballer. And
having people like that too, I think, set, as you say, you look to set a standard, but it has a principle. Maggers was a winner. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So those standards are never looking to drop with people like that as a coach.
And no matter what, and that's where, no matter what, there's trust. Yeah. With me, Maggers, Kyler, you know, there was so much trust. You know, there's Fergie there was Chris there, you know, but me, Kyler and Maggers had knew each other a long time. You know, Kyler and me were best mates. Me and Maggers were best mates from Northern Ireland, you know, in the under 15, 16. So there was a real strong connection there and trust there, and they would feel comfortable being able to tell me whatever they want to tell me, whether I like it or whether I don't. And that's what I liked about that, you know. And I knew if they said anything negative to me, or there was no other reason,
Yeah.
or they were looking it to be better, and they weren't looking to hurt me, and they weren't looking at, they were saying it for a reason. And there's times like everything, like I can't see everything, I'm not right in everything, I'm certainly not perfect, I have loads of flaws, and that's when you need somebody to step in at times and go, I think you're wrong there, I think you're wrong, I think you're out of order, or whatever it is. And that's always going to be the case. But it just was a really good time with Glenavon. It turned sour, yep, it did, and it sort of killed me because of my personality.
Yeah.
It's I couldn't cure,
Yeah.
but it's just ruined what I had with the football club, you know. And now, you know, I went from following Glenavon from 6 years of age, loved it, loved the club. Even when I played for Portadown, like I only played for Portadown because Glenavon didn't want me.
Yeah.
It wasn't no other reason, and that was the simple of it at that time. But I always followed Glenavon, and then I got that opportunity, which I'd always dreamed of as a child, and that was my, like, obviously going to England and all the rest of it. But whenever I first started out as a child, I wanted to play for Glenavon and win a trophy with Glenavon, because that's what I grew up watching. It was my uncles playing for Glenavon, so that was what I could relate to the most. Wasn't Man United or whatever, you know. I watched this week in, week out, so that's what I always wanted to do. And my granda went to the game, my dad went to the game. You know, it was a family affair at the time, and that's the one thing I'd always dreamed of. And for to be able to do that, you know, nearly 20 years later, or 30 years later probably, it was just the best ever. And I never wanted to lose that, and that's why, God rest his soul, like Adrian, like I went to Adrian about 2 weeks before it all ended, and I said to him, listen, Adrian, I knew 10 people. No, there was 10 people on the board. I knew 8 of them wanted me sacked. I knew that 100%. And me and Macker said, they thought, people think you're stupid, like, but you know the things. And me and Mackers, when we were playing at home, we used to turn around. We played Palomino one day. We beat them 1-0. And there was only one that season, actually, we got sacked. But when we scored, Mackers just nudged and we turned around, looked up in the director's box. There was actually 3 directors, didn't even clap the goal. Directors of a football club.
Writings on the wall.
Like, but it shows you what their mentality is.
Yeah.
You know,
Doesn't care. But you don't care.
no, it was just me. You know what I mean? Instead of being about the football club, which we always done in all our decisions was in the best interest of the football club, 3 directors of a football club didn't clap a goal, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And in any sense. So, but we already knew from the season before, we went in a 10-game run where we didn't win a game. And to be fair, Adrian told me on the Tuesday night they called a board meeting, and there was 8 of them wanted to do a vote.
Right.
But what saved us that time was 2 people weren't available, and it allowed Adrian to say, I can't have this vote unless everybody's here. Even though it wouldn't have mattered if the other 2 were there anyway, we would have been sacked with the majority. But Adrian, that was his way of delaying it.
Yeah.
And that Saturday we won, and we went in a 10-game unbeaten.
Right, okay.
And finished 7th. And then Adrian was able to go, there you go.
Uh-huh.
But when we come back to pre-season, we just noticed the 5 wasn't right. And then we lost Quinny, first game of the season. Hawks had been out, you know. We couldn't put the same back 4 in place. No, yeah, excuse, it's just what it was.
Injuries.
It's the facts. It's the facts, you know. And we had a really tough start with the top, with like Lauren, Stephen with Linfield. The first 4 games, and I was going,
Yeah.
like, even on a good days, we probably won't get anything out of them games anyway. But they come, and then we got the win against Ballymena. And then we drew at Lockall or something, and we were 2-0 down, and then come back to 2 each. And then we played Dungannon away the following week. But during the week, I just knew there was a vibe, and I'd phoned Adrian after the Ballymena game after we won, and I said, listen, Adrian, you told me last year 8 of the board wanted me sacked. I know it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid, you know, and listen, see what takes the pressure off of you. If you're trying to be loyal to me and back me, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Let them sack me. Let them sack me. I says, because I don't really want to work for people that don't want me in a job,
Yeah.
or don't want me here, or don't have faith in me, or trust in me. That's not the way I work. So if they want to sack me, tell them to sack me and come with a package for me. Because I think I deserve that after the service I give you. And I have a family to think about. And if I didn't have that situation, then I would probably walk away myself. But
You can't.
I can't do it. I have 2 kids to provide for, and I have a mortgage to pay, and I think I've given the club years of service on money that I should have been on more, but I've done it because of
And the
club.
amount of money you made the club.
Made the club. Well, yeah, I just thought it was fair. I thought it was all fair, and that was my honest opinion on it. But the bit that threw me off and annoyed me was I gave him that opportunity, and then he phoned Mackers on the Wednesday and asked Mackers to take him out for lunch, and said, like, Gary has this thing in his head that, and Mackers goes, no, not just Gary. We all have. All the staff know
You know.
that you don't, not you, but we know that the majority of the board don't want us there, and we know the vibe's not good. And he's going, well, that's not true. They haven't mentioned it. I was okay. He then phoned me and met me on the Thursday. Northern Ireland under-21s were playing at Mornview. We went for lunch before, and he said exactly the same thing to me. And I went, right, well, if you're saying that, that's fine. I'm not getting that vibe. But if that's what I'll not mention it ever again. I give you the opportunity. We played the Saturday, which is 2 days later. Gets beat. We actually had a man sent off as well. We were actually decent that day, and when a man sent off and killed us. And then that night, I got home, and I just found it strange because Adrian didn't phone me at night, or didn't phone me at the afternoon. And then I phoned Adrian on a Sunday morning, and I says, "You all right, Chairman?" He just went, I am. And I says, well, terrible yesterday with the way sending off killed us, like, because we were well in the game. It's just not good enough. And I said, well, that's okay. And he says, I think we want to have a word with the board, and then, maybe sit down and have a chat with you. I says, all right. I says, what are you trying to say? Is that me sacked or something? I thought Thursday you said there was no chance of that. Well, a few of the board, have been saying it again. I'll have to meet them. And I says, well, who do you have to meet? And he named a few of the directors. 4 of the directors weren't even at the game that day. Weren't even there. And I went, and I actually turned around to them, and I'm not naming the names. Like, I just said, so you're going to speak to people that weren't at the game? Doesn't make sense. And I said, so them 4 shouldn't even get a vote. They weren't there. But obviously they were always going to get a vote, but they weren't at the match. So I was okay. Sunday night come, I never heard anything. Monday morning I got a phone call from a guy that worked in the local, or drinks in the local. And I'm going, just shows you the way football clubs are. This guy phoned at me and he goes, you getting sacked tonight? I went,
That's mental.
how do you know that? What have you heard? Oh, I was in the shop this morning getting the papers. Said there's a meeting at 6:30 tonight. You're getting sacked? I says, nah, mate, nah, I was talking. So I got off the phone and phoned Adrian. So I said, listen, Adrian, is there a meeting tonight? We're at 6:30. And he went, how do you know that? I says, well, people in Ireland know it.
Yeah.
It would be nice after the year's service I'll give you. Somebody could have phoned me and spoke to me first.
Yeah.
Well, can I come meet you first in the house? And blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, no problem. And that was it. And then they went, negotiated it, whatever. They said they were going to sack me. I said, right, that on. And that was it. But it was just the way it was all done. And there was a lot of lies told at the end that didn't need to be told, because as I said,
You're very straightforward, and I think.
I know the sack's inevitable for all of us. So all it had to be was, listen, Gary, the board's it's run its course. It's run its course. We're not happy. Can we shake hands, move on? And that's it. But it was what they were trying to spin, that I was looking to resign, or I wanted sacked. Like I said, why would I want out of a job when it was my only income?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And that was a bit that hurt me at the end. But at the end of the day, it's football, and it's just because probably of that association with the football club for such a long time.
How are you now?
Good, yeah. Listen, we can always be better, like, but in terms of work, good. My kids are brilliant. You know, I've got a really good relationship with them. It's like brothers, really, to be fair. You know, it's all good, you know, and it's just, it's one of them ones that we can always be happier, but listen, it is what it is, and you know, it's sometimes other sides of your life you like better, you know, and that's the reality, but you know, maybe someday we'll get there.
Ever a chance of going back?
Football?
Yeah.
Listen, there's always I would never say never to nothing. Nothing. A few things, but in terms of opportunities like that. But like I've always done, even whenever I took the Glenavon job, but it was calculated, you know. I don't go, I'm a deep thinker and I think everything, and I think all, like I remember Chris Lindsay coming to me at the time and saying to me about going in and taking the Dungannon job, and I said, Chris, don't think it's a good job, you know, because Dungannon's always been known as a family club, the Macquaries, and it's a hard club, but there's also no big support for you to grow with, and I think for an outsider to go into Dungannon's very, very difficult, and it's been proven, because Rodney's really the only one that's
Really been able
really done a lot with them, and Joe before that, you know. And I said, if you're going to take jobs, you need to take jobs with support that has a potential, like Ballymena, like Glenavon, like Portadown, like, you know, you have to have a potential there, because there's no point in going into, let's back to Carrick or, you know, where if it goes so well, the support's never going to get there, so you can never keep bouncing and improving. And, you know, I'm not saying that you don't take jobs like that, but it's everything has to be right, every single thing. And at the minute, you look out there and, you know, like and I look at football and I go, sometimes I'm not surprised why people don't want to go out. Look at David Healy. Yeah. Look at the abuse that man's got. And they've won the league this year. Probably won it by the most ever points, the Premier League. They've won it the earliest it's ever been won, right? And the journalists in this country and people in this country saying it was the worst Linfield team ever.
No.
And I'm going like, I think it's disrespectful, number one.
It is.
To him, to his players. But then these people are also saying Glentoran, Declan Define's doing a great job. The job Jim Magilton's doing, the job Ronnie McAree's doing, and they all are doing good jobs.
Yeah.
But
he just
how is David Healy's team the worst team ever? And all these guys are so far behind them, but they're doing brilliant jobs.
Yeah.
And those things annoy me, and I go, like, David's done incredible at Linfield Football Club, and the last couple of years when he didn't win it, teams like Larne and Glentoran and now Coleraine are all paying more money than Linfield. Linfield's not now the biggest club, the biggest players.
Not even
the players have lost. They're not even close.
Not even close.
And he's still finishing first or second every year.
Yeah. And
he's still bringing it a challenge at the very least, if not winning it. And truthfully, I don't think it'll happen. And if it was me, if it was David Healy, that's just the way I am.
Yeah.
I'd be saying, well done, everything.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I love Linfield Football Club. I'm away.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's ever going to get the credit that he fully deserves. Because he's done it year in, year out, and it still isn't enough for people, and it hurts me because I've known Dave from us younger, and I'm going,
such a lovely fella too. Like,
he's a good guy, and but just give respect to people and give credit to people, and don't disrespect somebody by saying it's the worst Linfield team ever.
If anything, what does that say about everybody else?
Exactly. You know, but yet these people are saying about this club and this club and this club, and I go, but hold on a minute. It's the furthest ever gap.
Yeah.
Ever. It's the earliest ever been won. So how is this club down here and this club down here doing unbelievable? But the club that's done that, they're just all right. They're not the best of teams. They know how to grind out victories. Well, it's not what football's all about.
Don't care if you win one.
Doesn't matter what else goes on as long as you're winning. And we're all the same.
Yeah.
But I just think that the job that David's done over all those years has been, and like, you know, at the end of the day, he's an idol in this country for what he's done for Northern Ireland. And again, people like him, who's done what he's done for the national team and played in England and everything else, to actually give back to the local league and actually come and manage in it
100%.
and give it.
Regardless if that's a stepping stone or not, it's doing nothing but publicising in a good way how good the league is going. Having people like that in it.
Don't have to come in the
Yeah, they don't.
They don't have to. Jim Hilton doesn't have to come in and manage it. You know, and when they're in it and when they're doing what they're doing, respect them, and especially when they're achieving and they're doing good jobs, and that's it. That's the one thing that I look at and go in football, like, so fickle, and supporters are so fickle, and it's a catch-22 because you need supporters for clubs to function and clubs to, but also the supporters can create such a bad vibe and a bad atmosphere around the football club, you know, and initiate decisions that mightn't be right for the football club by forcing managers to get sacked or whatever, and they do have that power, you know, and not all occasions are they always right in terms of what they want.
Yeah. Guy, one of the last things I want to talk to you about is, we've talked about how toxic it was towards the end of your days at Glenavon, and then the passing of your grandfather, who was probably the closest person to you. How was that mentally and physically?
That was the worst time in my life, and to this day, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Like, I had traumas when I was younger, and again, it's all going back to their childhood, you know. My older nanny and granda, I probably don't remember as much of them because they died before I was like P6, P7, you know, in around that period. And I would lay and watch my granny die of cancer for 5-6 months in a bed and go down to like 4 or 5 stone, and it was horrible. And, you know, it was sort of what I was always surrounded with. And then after that, I was down the farm with my granda, and he got hit with a bull on the chest, and he collapsed to the ground, and he couldn't get up. And then it was only me and him there. And then when he did get himself around to get up, he turned around to me and he said, "Don't you dare tell your mum and dad what happened." Like, and I was like, okay, granda. And then one day I was up at the farm, and my granda had a wee mate of mine up sort of playing with me, and it got the tea time, and my mum said, "Listen, we'll go and leave Andrew home here." So, like, Andrew lived literally a mile down the road from us, and we went down the road, but as women do, my mum done, it's just students chatted to his ma for a while, but I used to go down with my granda just down to the farm with him just before dinner and that, and then come back up again, and I said, "I'm sure I'll see you when I come back. I'll come down when I come back." And we were driving back, and literally it's a mile from that house to my house, and when we were driving back, there was an ambulance past us and there was a police car past us, and we got up the lane and down, and my granda died, and he just dropped dead with a heart attack. And, you know, as a young kid, I couldn't get my head around this, and I was going, "Flip, that had anything to do with that bull hitting him the other week?" And I didn't tell anybody, and that lived with me for a long time. And to be fair, then the granda that we're talking about, like, it was such a massive part of my life. Like I could have went with my granda with absolutely anything. When I was going through my divorce, I went with him, you know, and I'd done lots of wrong things, by the way. I'd made lots of mistakes in my life, like with different things, and I could always go to my granda and speak to him and listen. If I'd done wrong, he would have said, "I don't agree with it, and disappointed, and whatever." But no matter what, at the end of the conversation, he used to always say, "I have your back. I love you. You know, you're my grandson." And it was such a good feeling, and it was the only person that I ever got that feeling off in my entire life. And when it happened, you know, it was coming to the end, and he got dementia, and I was really struggling. I used to go into visiting in the hospital and in the home every day, or as much as I could, and not maybe every single day, but at least 5-6 times a week. But I could only sort of go in for 20 minutes at a time because it was killing me seeing my granda like that, you know, where he didn't know where he was. He was coming out with stupid stuff, and it wasn't a man that I grew up idolising. So I genuinely idolised him. And if you go to my house now, like, you know, whenever I come in the house at night and go up to bed, The last person I see before I go to bed is my granda. He's in a place that I make sure I see him. In the morning when I get up, the first person I see and I come down them stairs is my granda, and that's how much he means to me, and always has meant to me. And you know, he was my hero. I looked up to him, and when I remember one of the last times that I went in to see him, it was the first time he didn't know me. Forgot everybody, not everybody else, but most of the other people by this stage, but he still always knew me right up until near the end. And I went into the home one day and he didn't know me, and I swear I come out, and I'm not joking, I went and took a drive, and I literally cried and cried and cried. I went, this can't happen to me. I can't lose the one person that I have so much faith and trust in, and it's the only one that's ever told me he's proud of me and all the time, and you know, I couldn't come to terms with it, Johnny. I couldn't. I really, really struggled, and then it come to a time, and there was something come into my head, and this is a freaky story, and Mark McIntosh can vouch for this, and all the rest of the journalists that were there that day can vouch for this, because it happened and they all seen it. It was one of the freakiest things ever happened to me. But on the Saturday, on the Friday night, actually out of the Friday, I got someone come over to me, and I hadn't been to see my granda for a week or so. And someone just come over to me and said, you need to go back to him. And I was lying in bed this stage, and he was like, he wasn't really conversing, or then he was just lying there really. And I went in and I sat in the room that night, and there was an old chair sitting there, and I literally stayed the night. And I got up and went to the match the next day, and afterwards I was still in my head, and I went back again, and I lay in the car, or that old seat that night as well. It was something similar to this, and spent that night with him as well. And then on the Sunday I went back again. But on the Monday morning, I was getting manager of the month. Okay. And I had to go down to Windsor on the Monday. And that morning, whenever I went over to visit him, because I had made my mind up whether to go down, I was keeping in touch with Mark. And that morning, whenever I went to go over to visit him, they said he would probably pass that day, and I said, well, how quick, how long? And they went, we can't give you a time, but his heart's still strong. So I said, well, I'll tell you what it is. I've just got manager a month. I couldn't care about it. It means absolutely nothing to me. But I would love to go down and dedicate this to my granda, you know, because I know the inevitable is going to happen, and that's the only reason why I want to get it. I have no other interest in it. Never have done with any of them awards. So literally she said, no, well, that'll be fine. And we went down, and again, times I can't really recall the time exactly. I would say it was 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. I went down and went into the room, and they got up and they do their bits and pieces. You've been at them, and they announced me as the manager of the month and said to me to get up and speak a few words. And I literally got up, and I had my phone in my pocket at all times, and I had it on vibrate, because just in case anything happened. And literally I got up to speak, and I said, listen, like, a thank for the word, but it doesn't really mean anything to me, but I want to dedicate this to my granda. And as soon as I say granda, my phone went zzz, zzz, and I went, and I literally stopped mid-speech, lifted my phone out, looked at my phone, and it was my cousin Emma. Granda has just died. And I actually, honestly, I was broken. I was absolutely destroyed. And I'll tell you, the journalists were there, I just broke. I couldn't stop crying. And I literally, to this day, don't know how I got home. I literally can't even remember the drive home. I remember crying and crying and crying the whole way home. And I literally drove to the home that he was in. And like, I remember getting there, and the home had obviously, he had passed, and an hour had gone past at this stage by the time I got back. And my mum and auntie and all them went and done whatever. But I went into home and I said, can I see my granddad? Can I see my granddad? Yeah, go on. Yeah, it's okay, no problem. And I never forget it. I went up into the room and he was obviously dead, like, and I just got into bed beside him. I just had to hold him. I couldn't let go of him. And there was a bit of anger went over me as well, and which was wrong, by the way, completely and utterly wrong, but it was just emotions at the time, and I was actually getting angry with everybody. Why'd you just leave him? Why'd you just leave him? You know, and in my head, I was, why'd you just leave him? And I couldn't leave him, and I had to stay because obviously they'd said that the ambulance would come and pick him up and bring him to Undertakers and all that, or whatever it was, and I went and I lay there for right until they come to pick him up, and then they brought him away and everything else, but it literally destroyed me. It literally destroyed me, and I'll never forget it. That was a Monday. We played Coleraine, and again, all these things happen, and we played Coleraine that Saturday. And in all my time at Glenavon, bar maybe your first couple of weeks when you win 3-0 and you go top of the league, you're top of the league in the first week because you win 3-0 or whatever. But never in my time at Glenavon had we been top of the league in October, ever. And we went to Coleraine that Saturday. And I'm not going to lie here, like, because it's not in me. The funeral was a Friday. And after the funeral, I just went and a drink. And it was my way of coping with it. Doesn't mean it's right. It was my way of coping with it. And I remember the next morning, my cousin said he would pick me up and bring me to the game, up at the game, because he knew I was going to have a drink. And I remember the next morning at 11:30, not even home. And I went, I have to leave at 12 o'clock to go to Coleraine. Got back to the house. Got charged changed. Cousin picked me up. We picked Wendy on the way up. And I didn't want to be at the match. I literally didn't want to be at the match. My head was gone. And I actually remember stopping, and again, I'll be open about it. I stopped and I said, listen, I can't do this. I actually can't do this. I need to stop and get some beers here or something. Settle me. And I remember stopping in the off license and getting 6-pack of beer and having a couple of beers on the way up. And I remember getting to the ground and I went, I can't face anybody. I actually can't go into the change room here. I can't do it. And I went up into the upstairs bar, Coleraine, and above the change rooms. I went up in there and I just sat and had a couple of beers. And I always remember John Gregg coming in, all right? And I went, no, I'm not all right, John, no. I don't want to be here. I actually don't want to be here. I can't cope. I just lost my granddad. And then when they come up and says, would you come down to the team talk? And he says, just do it for the players, like. And I went, right, okay. And I always remember going down and doing the team talk, and in the middle of the team talk, I said, listen, lads, I don't care what happens here today. And I've never asked you for anything, but if you can do me one thing a day is win for my granddad. And as soon as I said the words granddad, just again, and I'm not ashamed of it. I don't get ashamed being emotional or crying or anything like that, because I think it's more manly if you can do that. But that day, I was nobody. I was gone. I just lost the most important person to me in my life, and it's funny the way it works out again. We won 4-0. Stephen Murray scores a hat-trick, and we go top of the league for the first ever time. And I remember afterwards, we literally, afterwards they were all going home, and I said, nah. And believe it or not, Skinner was a Coleraine at the time. And I ended up with Skinner. I don't even know how. Skinner and Andy Murphy. And I ended up in Belfast with him. And then I come back home from that, and then I just went, I need to get away here. I need to get away. And I literally just booked a flight to Spain, went to Spain for 4 days. And I come back again for the match on the Saturday. But after that, I really, really, really mentally struggled for a long, long time. There was other things that happened as well in that period, and that was just the final straw, and it was the lowest point in my life at that point, and it was I was nearly not here, and I just was broken. I was absolutely broken, and I couldn't see a way out. And then I'd actually got myself into, and like, I know now sitting here, I know what I am and who I am, and I'm a decent person. I'm a decent dad. With people I let into my life, I'm good to them, and I want the best for them. But at that stage, I didn't even see myself as a good father. I didn't see myself as I seen it as my kids were better off without me, and it was scary, the thoughts that went through my head, and it was all because I couldn't cope with losing my granddad. And like, my ex-wife had met a guy called Paddy, who's, by the way, a superb person, a really good guy, really good to my kids. And I was actually in my head going, they've got Paddy, doesn't matter if I'm here, and I don't want to be involved in football anymore because I haven't got my granddad to talk to after, and I haven't got him to bounce off, I haven't got him to, and it just got to a really, really bad stage. And I remember one day just breaking and going to my mum's, and that was it for me. I'd thought about it for a few days, and I went, I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to be here. I actually genuinely don't want to be here anymore. In fact, I don't have my granddad. What's the point? And it was a tough time, and I had it all planned, and had my two kids in bed, and they probably didn't even realise they were younger than what they are now, obviously a lot younger. They probably didn't realise the extent of it, but like, I was actually lying beside the two of them in bed and going, what do you want to be in life? And they were telling me, I want to be footballers like you, Daddy. And I said, well, if you want to be footballers, don't let anybody tell you can't be footballers. You do everything in your power to be footballers, and no matter what, Daddy will be always looking over you. And I just broke when I was telling them it, and the two of them, I said, right, now go down to your granny. And they went down to their granny, and I had an auntie at the time called Auntie Sandra, and it would have been somebody I bounced off a lot when I was younger. And I didn't really see her this period for that often, because we just where we lived and different things like that. And I remember coming down the stairs, and I'd said that my mum was going to Mark McIntosh's, but I wasn't going to Mark McIntosh's. I was going to do one thing and one thing only, and that was put an end to what I was feeling. And when I come down the stairs, I remember going to walk out the door, and Auntie Sandra come running in, and it just was, and she wouldn't let me go. She just went, I have to go and see Mark here. No, you're not. You're coming in with me for a cup of tea. I haven't seen you in years. You're coming in. And in that split second, it just changed it. And ended up going and actually seeing Mark in a different way, and talking to him and saying I really needed help, and going to see the doctors and going to see people, and like, again, and this is what I keep saying to people need to talk, because I didn't. I built it up, and I let it build up, and I didn't. And I was lucky at that time. But I keep saying it now, and we've seen what's happened this year with people in the Irish League, and it always brings it back to me. And I've never talked this about it. Only the people know about this is like some Mark McIntosh, Mackers knows about it. You know, obviously Dr. Best, who I spoke to a lot. There's very people, and probably again me being me, you know. But whenever I've seen what's happened in the last season in Irish League football, I think people need to know that they're not alone, and they need to be able to talk to people. And it doesn't matter who it is. It's, you need to be able to not feel embarrassed, not feel ashamed, not feel, because that's all the things that we men do. And especially, again, I was at your classic example of it. Somebody in their 30s, 40s, separated, you know, single, you know, on your own, too much time in your hands, and that's a dangerous position to be in, especially when traumas or major things like that happen to you. And I think it's so important for anybody that's in that situation now, and to open up and come to people and seek help specialists, and because there's lots of people out there, can I help you? And from then, like I've done lots of work. I can still be better. I can still be a lot better person. Not as in that other way. I mean, as a person, there's lots of things I can still improve on. I have still lots of flaws, but I'll keep working on them. But I don't want to, if I can, ever get back to that place again, because it's a horrible place, especially when the two most other important things in your life, you're prepared to leave them, and you're thinking yourself you're not good enough for them, and you're not a good enough daddy, and you're not. And I know now how, like, from speaking to them, like, my kids, I'm near like brothers. Like, it's not a father-son relationship, and I love them so much, and that's how scary it is to think that I was prepared to do that at one stage.
And how are you now?
Honestly, yeah, a lot better. A lot better. You know, I still miss my granda. I still miss my granda every day. Every day. Every day, and I look at that picture in the morning, and that picture going to bed. So last first thought. But it also gives me a strength as well, you know what I mean? Because my granda was an amazing person. My granda didn't know his dad. He had a sister and a mum, and he was a man of a house very, very young. And, you know, he was an incredible person, and, you know, the way he treated me, the way he treated everybody, you know. Again, probably in that generation, he could be hard at times as well, don't get me wrong, like everybody could, but he had that thing about him, and he always wanted to see people do well, and in every walk of life, and he always encouraged us. And the one big thing, he was always proud of us as people, and I was proud of him. I'm proud to have him as a granda. Lucky to have him as a granda. So it was again a lot of my, and again when I come out of football, it probably didn't bother me as much because he was no longer about me, and he was the one person I phoned every Sunday after a match, because I knew he was going to be honest with me, and I would listen to him, whereas I wouldn't listen to anybody else. You know, he's the only person that could say how he felt to me, and good or bad. But you know, when it was good, he was so proud that he had you as a grandson. But when he was bad, when I was bad or whatever, he would have, that's not you, you need to be better than that, you know. And he used to give me at that side as well. But even when he gave you criticism, he always finished it with, "But don't worry, I have your back," you know. And it's something that always stood by me, and something I hope I'm able to, and hopefully my sons say that about me, and at some stage in their life, that, you know, I was fair, but I always had their back, and they could come to me winning.
Tough.
Yeah, and it was a really tough period of my life. And the toughest things when you're hiding it, and you're going home, and you're lying in your room at nights, and it's brutal. It's actually brutal. And you don't wish it on anybody, but it's trying not to let yourself get that stage, and you don't get that stage if you talk.
I don't apologise for showing emotion, but
Right, Paul? Right?
oh, you got me.
Yeah.
Feel fine. I just I don't know how to describe it, like, because
We've always been there, Johnny.
you know what I mean.
Everybody's been in a position at some stage. I'm not saying that they've got to that extent, but we've all been in low places, and a lot of us will hide it. I've done it recently again, not to that extent where I was that,
Yeah.
but you do it, and there's things that can affect you, and it could be a relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be your kid, it could be your mum, it could be your dad, it could be anything, and there's things that trigger us, and you get into a place, and we all do it. I've done it since my granda, not as in that thoughts, but I've got into places that I shouldn't have been, and I shouldn't have been thinking the thoughts of the thought, in terms of, you know, we're all going to go through it, and it's just trying to get somebody to help us deal with it. And that's why, no matter what, that's why I speak to people all the time. And like Maggers will tell you, half the time his ears are probably bent, because any time now that there's something wrong with me, I phone him and talk to him, or Kyler, Mark McIntosh or whoever, you have people that you can trust, that you can tell them your problems, and I think that's the most important thing, that it's not going to go any further, and you can trust them with it.
Well, I'm glad that you feel comfortable enough to obviously share this. Like, it's the first time I've heard it. I would say people don't understand. Like, it's very emotional, but having that inner circle of people to confide in and trust is something that people need to have. And ultimately, if they don't, it can be a very hard place to be.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
I know you don't do interviews as such. I'm one of the very lucky people, and so should you be. But again, thank you very much for coming on. I genuinely appreciate it.
One thing I forgot to tell you.
What?
A long, long time ago, and you might remember this match. Cliftonville played Glenavon reserves at Mourneview. That was an early kickoff.
Right.
I always remember earmarking 2 players at the time. The match finished 4-3. You scored 4. Who scored a hat-trick? Andrew Mitchell. I always remember going up in the car with the coach we were actually playing Cliftonville in the afternoon, actually, believe it or not. And I always remember going up to the car in the afternoon, and I went, there's the 2 next best young strikers in the league. I said, seeing them 2, both of them, they're going to be unbelievable. And I always seen it in you, see the 2 of you, and my regret with you is I didn't get the chance to work with you, because I thought, genuinely, I always thought, I think you've got that a wee bit of edginess about you as well, and there's a wee bit of, and I just love to work with somebody like you. I think I could have got a lot more out of you, and that's what I always said. That I think, Johnny, if I'd be totally honest, I think that you could have done more with the ability you had. You had a few injuries in that, but you had 2 really good seasons at Ballymena, and I think you could have had a lot more than what I've seen, and I just will always love that. I just thought you everything, you're decent in the air, you had speed, 2 feet, strong, but I just think you needed something, and it's not surprised that Davey probably got the best out of you in that period, you know what I mean, out of all of them.
When ultimately, not to continue this on too much longer, but when you talk about certain regrets, certain people have over their years, well, you've had regrets. One of my regrets is not pairing up with certain people, and you were one of them, and David Healy was the other.
Yeah,
because I think that the only way for me to potentially get to another level was to go and work with someone who was actually focused on centre forwards.
Yeah.
And wanted to potentially develop somebody.
Yeah.
And I'll always look back and go, that's where I think that I let myself down.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate that too. Put a smile on my face towards the end. But listen, thank you. Really appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much for coming in. And I'm glad to see you're doing well.
Cheers. Cheers, man.